So, good morning, everybody, again, and thank you for this honor of allowing me to come and share my story. And what I want to share with you today is not just my testimony, it's the story of how God can take a life marked by trauma and pain and build something lasting and beautiful. It is the story of sparrow schools, yes, but it's also the story of being held together by grace. If anybody had told me years ago that I would one day lead an organization with 130 staff, millions rands budget every year, and serve hundreds of children and youth, I would have shaken my head in disbelief. I never saw myself as somebody who could do that. But I believe God gave me just enough vision for the next step. Not the full picture, because He knew I wouldn't cope with that. And I do believe that that is part of God's mercy. Because if I'd seen the road ahead in full, I might never have started walking. I was born into an extremely dysfunctional family. My mother had survived horrific abuse in her marriage. After her divorce, she lost custody of the children, all three of us. My baby brother was given up for adoption, and my older brother and I were placed in a children's home. He was 5, I was 3. And this home was not a refuge. It was another place of trauma and extreme child abuse. When I was 6, my only real connection in this world, my brother, was moved to a different facility, and I was moved to Johannesburg Children's Home. That separation crushed us and caused years of damage. But in the middle of all that loneliness in Johannesburg Children's Home, something truly amazing happened. I'll never forget that one night I was lying in my bed as a 6-year-old, traumatized, feeling abandoned, rejected, and suddenly I became very aware of Jesus' presence with me. I didn't have the words for it at that time, but I now know that it was His peace and strength, and I knew then that I was no longer alone. He saw me, He was with me, and He held me. And it was only years later, as I got to know my grandparents, Ethel and Willis Sparrow, for anybody who wonders where the name comes from, incredibly wonderful people, very committed Christians who were missionaries in East Africa, that they had been praying for me every single day. And those prayers, that covering, was part of what held me together when nothing else could. So at the age of 10, I went back to live with my mother and her new husband. Sadly, in desperate poverty and neglect, the trauma and abuse continued. But even there, God didn't stop working. My brother and I, through some neighbors in our street, found a little church, and we really wanted to make sure about our salvation. So we went up about 5 times for altar calls, just to make sure that we were saved, until our neighbors reassured us that we were okay, that we were born again. And just after that, I joined a Methodist youth group. And it was really here, on Friday nights in my teenage years, that I found a place to go, have fun, to laugh, to feel loved, and to be seen. And Matt, it was in one of those youth camps that I really experienced the Holy Spirit in a powerful way. I received physical healing, and I also again experienced His deep presence filling me. And then that is really when I made a promise to myself that the cycle of abuse needed to end there and with me. And it was through God's grace and generosity that I managed to get a bursary. I became the first person in my family to matriculate. And I went off to study teaching. That wasn't the plan that I thought I had for my life, but I did it because I'd received a bursary. And this bursary included living in the res in Parktown, Johannesburg, and it was really my lifesaver because I could finally move out of that home of abuse. I started to experience all the goodness of God and His provision during my time at Johannesburg College of Education and discovered my passion for teaching. In the early 1980s, it's telling you how old I am, I walked into the Vineyard Church in Parkview, Johannesburg, and I knew instantly, this is home. And that is where my real healing began. God surrounded me with mentors, friends, and teaching that transformed my life. Courses like Inner Healing and Learn to Love Yourself opened up a whole new understanding of myself and of God's love for me. And it was in that nurturing environment that I began to dream again. People like Costa Mitchell played a key role in that season. He not only listened to the vision stirring my heart, but encouraged it. Something very new for me. When I shared my dream of starting a school, a place for children left behind by society, just as I had once been, he didn't dismiss it. Instead, he affirmed the calling and helped me to believe that it was possible. I also met an incredible woman, Sue Perisset, who counseled me through the trauma of my early years. It was a long road. So while running the Saturday school, I also worked part-time delivering lost baggage for the airways. That job gave me time during the week, and during that season, I was invited to an event hosted by the Vineyard in Soweto, south of Johannesburg, at a farm that was owned by the Vineyard. There was some incredible community work unfolding there, and my passion for social justice exploded. It was there that I connected with Alexander Venter. I reached out to Alexander to ask, how could I support the small little local school operating close by? And his response was simple, but very profound. The first thing, Jackie, is to be teachable and to listen to people. That really was a life-changing statement for me. And that moment left a mark on me. He reminded me that being teachable and learning from others is foundational to ministry. We don't have all the answers, and we never will. But if we remain open, God teaches us through others all the time. So when we eventually arrived in Limpopo, Peter and I last year, I carried this lesson with me. I made a conscious decision to listen first. I engaged with the team at the Hoedspruit Hub, people who had been faithfully serving in that region for years, and I continue to learn from them even now. Their insights, experience, and commitment have helped shape our approach, and I'm constantly reminded that humility and a willingness to learn are what keep us effective and grounded in ministry. From Parkview to Soweto to Limpopo, God has used faithful people like Costa, Sue Perisset, and Alexander, amongst many others, to shape my journey. And it's their wisdom on teachability, vision, and healing that continues to guide me today. So the dream of Sparrow, I won't go into too much of it because I did a lot of that yesterday and I don't want to bore people, but that dream of Sparrow didn't begin with a strategy document. Sorry to tell all of you out there, God did not write on the bedroom walls what I needed to be doing, and He certainly didn't appear on my duvet. It happened through 4 children that arrived on a Saturday morning in a church hall in Joburg Park that needed bridging education to move from the township schools into the open white schools in Johannesburg. They paid 35 Rand a month because I believed in dignity and empowerment and not a handout. From 4, we grew to 27 and then 250. And we grew faster than we could manage, but God kept providing. I decided in my wisdom that I would just take these 27 children on a camp, and I learned my first lesson about networking. And I found an old classmate who gave me a check to cover the costs. My friends all came along to help me on the camp, which was clearly support from God. When we needed premises later on, once we had 550 children on a Saturday morning, I managed to find an old abandoned building. And this is a true story. I was really struggling to find facilities in Johannesburg because at that time, with all the, I'd say, fly-by-night schools, we used to call them, a lot of children were trying to move out of the townships. They were moving into schools that were opening up in Johannesburg. There weren't many buildings where you could actually rent. And I found out about an old Toyota building that had one of these fly-by-night. Fly-by-night was they'd be here today, parents would pay the money, and the next day they'd be gone. Parents were desperate for education. And I found out about a Toyota building that had been used for this. And it was a Saturday morning, downtown Johannesburg. It was a very high fence, and I climbed over it because I couldn't find anybody to open up the gate. I peeped through the windows until a security guard came and threw me out. But he did give me the information of who to speak to. And so I went down to Toyota in Braamfontein, and I sat at the manager's office until he would see me. And he said, okay, the last school that was here didn't pay water and electricity, so you can rent the building, but we ain't turning the water and electricity on. So we had to use natural sunlight. And we won't talk about the bathrooms. So that was how Sparrow was built, one small act of obedience at a time. Over the years, Sparrow has become more than a school. It has become a movement. We launched Sparrow Foundation School for young learners with barriers to learning. We launched the combined technical skills schools for teens struggling in mainstream education. We launched the Sparrow FET College, or TVET College, which today trains over 600 unemployed youth annually in areas like motor mechanics, hospitality, IT, and electrical skills. We raised the money and took 5 choir tours to the UK, giving our learners the chance to travel, perform, and represent their country with pride. Many had never left Johannesburg before. We also organized 3 cricket tours to the UK, teaching teamwork and discipline, and for some opening the doors to leadership in their communities. We established a registered UK charity, which allows us to receive international funding and build long-term partnerships with churches, donors, and businesses abroad. But let me say something very important here. While Sparrow began with fire and passion in my heart, it was good governance and careful planning that allowed it to grow and endure, and having good people around me. God did bring the right people, board members, advisors, financial managers, school leaders, people with wisdom and skills I don't have. They helped me build systems, policies, and accountability that made Sparrow strong. It is so important to be surrounded by the right people who will be honest with you no matter what, and that you hear them, no matter how painful, and who will support you during the really tough times. Because we faced many tough storms, heartbreaking losses, financial issues, leadership challenges, betrayal, and endless red tape. And there were days where I truly wanted to give up. But every time I hit the end of myself, God stepped in. Every tough challenge was an opportunity for me to grow. One of his greatest gifts to me has been my husband, Peter. Peter became the steady hand in the background, managing the finances with integrity and ensuring our governance is always managed well. I have to tell a funny story about Peter, the accountant. You know, marketing people, dreamers like me, can find 100 different ways of spending money on a daily basis. And Peter, the finance guy, with his team, they're the ones that always say no. So when it came to COVID, and, you know, of course, I did share the story a little bit yesterday. First, I said, there's no ways Sparrow's shutting down. You know, this is a national crisis. But I'm like, the whole world is shutting down. We're not shutting down. Okay, we had to shut down. But we formed a COVID committee. And our senior managers met. And it's the finance manager. It's Peter sitting there, part of the trustees looking at the risk. It's the HR manager and it's the academic manager. And it's me, the person with the heart, is going, people are going home, we can't pay them. How can we pay people when they're working from home? How will we know what they're doing? And Mr. Accountant who says, we don't mess with people's money. That is why we have been investing money all these years, because money is there for a rainy day. It's storming. So we paid our people throughout COVID. So what next at Sparrow? Well, for the last 10 years, we've been working on a succession plan. The talk around town at Sparrow is that you should always be training up somebody to take your job. And it's very true. And it's not something we should take lightly. Succession planning is vital for any organization. One of my greatest fears is that I would have founder syndrome. Founder syndrome in nonprofits is where the founder will not let go. It's extremely, extremely unhealthy. And it was pointed out to me again because my passion really is dreaming, and I am a visionary, and I love to support other projects. It's really where I feel the happiest. And a young man in our church had started an aftercare program with children that lived on a rubbish dump. And he said to me, I think I finally found premises. I said, oh, where? West of Johannesburg, do you know such and such person? I said, yes, I know very well. She started her project the same year as I did. Incredible woman, committed Christian. She really had a vision from God. He'd woken her up in a dream, given her a picture of exactly what she must build, and she built it. She had received millions. And he said, it's this lady's project, and she's got some of those buildings that used to be used for a hospice, and she said that I can go and rent them. So I said, okay, make the appointment, I'll go with you, and let's go and have a look at them. Let's see how we can do this. And I drive off there with Tommy, and we arrive, and she's nowhere to be found. Bearing in mind, she was 15 years older than me when I started Sparrow, and I was 28, so she's 15 years older than me now, which puts her close to 80. And I'm like, so Tommy, where is she? And he's like, let me find out. He comes back and he says, oh, she's gone out to buy the milk. I'm like, she's gone out to buy the milk. Has she not got somebody that could have gone down to the shop or whatever? Anyway, she came back, got out of her car with a walking stick and a big bunch of keys. And she took us around. The place was run down. It was no longer operating. She'd rented it out to, she'd actually allowed homeless people to move in there, but she had no water, no electricity. The place had been vandalized. And I arrived home and I said to Peter, it's time for me to step down. I do not want to be at Sparrow with a bunch of keys and a walking stick. So we've been looking at succession planning, and last year we got to live a bit of Peter's dream. We moved to Limpopo. We went there for my sabbatical from June till the end of August last year, and I wasn't 100% sure that I could do this. Could I make this big move out of Joburg? And I just fell in love with the place. I fell in love with Limpopo. And I said to Peter before the sabbatical was up, because my plan was to actually retire formally from Sparrow next year when I turn 65. And I said, I can't go back. I can't go back to Johannesburg. And the lady who had stepped in, who's been at Sparrow for many years and has been a real rock for me as well, a wonderful friend, a wonderful supporter, who'd stepped in as the acting general manager, Melanie Malema, please forgive her for the surname. Peter and I went out for lunch with her in the July, and we thought, let's just sound her out. And I said, I'm really loving Limpopo. And she says, well, I'm really loving running the organization as the general manager. And we were like, we've got it. And let me tell you about succession planning. She's doing a way better job than me. I love networking, I love people, I love being out there and talking, but Melanie loves a policy and a procedure, if anybody can believe that. She loves a policy and a procedure. So, yeah, succession planning is extremely important. Peter and I now live in Limpopo, where I serve as the Community Development Manager for Sparrow Schools, and I love it. We work with young people and families through initiatives like the Hoedspruit Hub, offering basic IT training, life skills, and hope. We also manage the Sparrow Education Foundation Fund, thanks to Peter and his team, that supports new life-giving projects in Limpopo, helping to build others with the same heart, excellence, dignity, and deep compassion. I am doing what I love. I'm dreaming and collaborating. I'm living the bumper sticker that I saw in my early 20s that I loved on the back of somebody's car that says, God wants his children to share their toys. It's really important. So I stand not as someone who got it all right. I certainly haven't. You can just speak to Peter after the service and he can tell you all the blunders I've made. But as someone who was held together by the grace of God and the kindness of the people he sent. He sends people to all of us in our deepest needs. If we look back and reflect, we will see whether he sent people for a reason, a season, or to walk the long road with us. The girl who was abandoned and abused is now walking in purpose. Not because I was strong, but because he was faithful. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me, we are reminded in Matthew 25:40. This verse became the very heartbeat of Sparrow. And it's a reminder to all of us that God is present in every act of love, every moment of mercy, every choice to serve. Wherever you are today, whether you're walking through something painful or holding onto a vision that hasn't yet come to life, know this, he's not done with you. Let him hold you together. Let him build with the pieces of your brokenness and watch what he can do with a surrendered heart. Thank you very much. Wow.